Welcome to the Beau Leadership Group podcast. Today's show, why thinking slower makes you win faster. Welcome back to the Beau Leadership Group podcast. Last time we talked about how confidence is a leader's superpower, but today we're talking about overconfidence. If you don't have an MBA yet, this will give you a preview into one of the areas all accredited MBA programs touch on, and that is data-based decision-making. I promise you it's rewarding. I won't bore you with conjoint analysis, autoregressive integrated moving averages, or statistical details, but we want to blow the lid off your leadership skills by making leadership investment decisions that get you a return on your investment, and that's always the goal here. To use a cooking analogy, leadership is kind of crock pot process, not a deep fryer or instant cooking with a microwave or Instapot. Teachers in primary school make us interested in leadership from a very young age. You know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they talk about being president, and anybody can be president with the right mindset. As we get older, we think, that would be pretty difficult. As we get older, we also have opportunities to lead. Both my parents talked about leadership and why it was important. I think that helped me in my career, and that's part of the reason that I do this show. But I could have done much better if I had let ideas marinate or maybe based over me every day. Not someday, not once in a while, but every day. Have you ever seen a room full of really smart people charge full speed ahead in the wrong direction? Yeah, it's called confidence without data, and it can kill careers, companies, and even civilizations. The problem with boardroom echo chambers. Picture it, a boardroom, a few sharp suits, big titles, bigger opinions, but no new data, no fresh research, just gut instinct, loud voices, maybe a few fancy charts that support what they already wanted to do. Why do we do that? Why do we prefer gut decisions over real research? It frustrates me to no end. Why does brainstorming an ideal customer avatar in a room with no customers feel like enough? You'd think I'd be immune to this because I hate it so much, but as a market researcher certified at the expert level, shout out to all my fellow PRC rated professional researchers, but even I've gone ahead with business plans without doing any research. I think it's like a contractor who does beautiful custom cabinetry work and beautifies other people's houses, but never has time to remodel his own. He doesn't really get to enjoy the benefit of his skills. Similarly, I haven't enjoyed my market research skills as much as I should. Why? Because it's not convenient. Sometimes we need to stop and think a little slower to make better decisions. And that means you can win faster, because sometimes without data and real research to point you in the right direction, you go in the wrong direction fast, and it hurts. Remember what I said, we don't just want speed, we want velocity, which is speed plus direction. What is the real reason that we do things without researching? We go too fast when slow would have been faster, and winning could have been faster with a little research. It's because of what Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman calls System 1 thinking. System 1 is fast, automatic, confident. And we're often dead wrong when we think this way. Meanwhile, System 2 is the slow, careful, data-driven thinking. It takes effort. It's boring. It's uncool at the moment, but it's the system that builds real success. And Dr. Kahneman, when he talks about this, he calls it deliberate thinking. So what do we professors at MBA schools do to drum out overconfidence out of our MBA students on campuses around the world? Well, they teach a class called Data Decision Making. Sounds fun, right? And all MBAs have this course to fulfill the requirements for accreditation for an MBA. That's right. All business schools make students take an entire course. And in that course, they actually talk about overconfidence and how overconfidence kills businesses. About the 13th week at Wharton, they talk about overconfidence, like we're talking about it today. Fast and Slow Thinking by Daniel Kahneman explores how humans think and make decisions, breaking down the cognitive processes into two distinct systems, fast and slow. So fast, system 1, This is the fast, automatic, and intuitive way of thinking. It's effortless and quick, relying on heuristics, mental shortcuts to make snap judgments and decisions. System one is useful for daily tasks and when it's under time pressure, but it can also lead to biases and errors because it often makes judgments without fully considering all the information. As a pilot, I often talk about autopilots and how you can set the autopilot to head you straight into a storm. So, a more deliberate way, system two, slow thinking, this is the slow, deliberate, and analytical system. And hopefully you've got this now that I've repeated it a couple times, but it requires effort and conscious thought, such as solving complex math problems or making well thought out decisions. While system two is more accurate, it's often lazy, meaning that we tend to rely on system one unless we consciously make the effort to engage system two. So if you engage in system two lazily, which often happens, then it isn't much better. This challenges traditional economic theory, which assumes that people make rational choices. I won't bore you with the utility curves here, but Kahneman's overall argument is that we need to be aware of these biases and cognitive pitfalls to make better, more rational decisions. The book has profound implications for fields like economics, sociology, psychology, business, and even personal relationships. And for those of us who want to lead people and make great decisions, it's super huge. And that's why it's included in almost every MBA program in the world. Even in the fast moving web based online sales game, people will split test things, right? And look for statistically significant differences to help move things up because you get a return on the investment, right? By slowing it down a little bit, testing it out. That's what we're talking about. Let's play a quick game that we sometimes do with MBA students. I'll ask you a question and you silently guess the range where it's 90% likely that you would capture the answer. So you don't even have to get the answer exactly right. You can just say a range. 3 easy questions. If you were looking them up, but don't look them up, just guess. How many countries are there in Africa? The answer is 54. So did you come up with a range that incorporated 54? I actually was higher than that when I did it, so I was wrong. What if I told you Mount Rainier and Mount Whitney in the US are the tallest mountains at 14,000 feet? How tall in feet would you say Mount Everest is? Think of a range. Did your range include 29,000 feet? Because that's how tall Mount Everest is. It's double the size of those giant mountains. When was the first email sent? Come up with a range of dates. When do you think the first email was sent? The first email was actually sent in 1971 by Ray Tomlinson. I didn't start emailing until 20 years after that, so I actually missed that one too. So I missed 2 out of the 3. Most people wildly underestimate uncertainty. That's the reason that we did the little game, is that most people wildly underestimate uncertainty. Another way to say they're overconfident. MBA students at places like Wharton and Stanford flunk this game every year. It's not because they're dumb, of course, they're very smart. It's because they're overconfident. Now ask yourself, if we can't even guess trivia right, why would we trust ourselves to guess a customer's needs, buying habits, or fears without real research and real data? Why research is better than the boardroom gut reaction? Real research is a secret weapon. Primary research includes interviews, surveys, real customer data, primary to you. Ideally, it includes things around your competitors' customers so you can position yourself appropriately in the market to your strengths. Secondary research might be available to everybody, but it can be credible studies, market reports, industry trends. And this is what AI often provides when you search it up. We have another podcast on AI coming up, so I won't dwell on that too much now. Without primary and secondary research, you can get what engineers call feature creep, engineering cool things nobody asked for. You get missed opportunities, targeting people who can't afford or don't want what you sell. You get quiet exits, customers who silently disappear because you assume too much. And by the way, Brainstorming a customer avatar. Sometimes people do this and they think they're great at it, and they have no real evidence to prove what they're saying is even true. But without real data and doing an avatar, it's like building a bridge and guessing where the river might be. Now, the reason that choosing an avatar is a good thing is for those that will never pay for the research, which is often a lot of entrepreneurs who fail. The thing that helps is you're at least not marketing to the entire world, which is hugely expensive and inefficient, right? You're marketing to an avatar group. So you reduce the cost and the expense of it. So you improve the chance that you might have an ROI on what you're doing. But is it accurate? Is it likely to provide you with the biggest results? I'll tell you what, companies that have 200 million or more in revenue and a real research person never do avatars unless they would do it like anecdotally after they get the data. So use the data to develop the avatar, not just pull an avatar out of the air. When you care enough to research, you're not weak, you're strong. You're saying, I respect my customers, my team. I'm not overconfident. My investors are important to me, and I want to find out what's real. You're saying, I won't let my ego drive this company into the ditch. Does hiring a market researcher cost money? Sure. Does it take time? Yep. And is it cheaper than bankruptcy? Well, now we're talking. Yes, absolutely cheaper than bankruptcy. And if you think about bringing in an outsider, a leadership consultant or a researcher, a second opinion or an attorney, you think that makes you look weak? Think again. It shows you're a strong person who wants to value truth over pride, and you want to bring in a strong team. So, strong team, strong results, return on investment. I think we're getting somewhere now because would you rather be right or successful? How to erase overconfidence with data and think like you have an MBA. At Whitman, where I went to school, and in Wharton's MBA data decision making class, and similarly in top programs like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Sloan, Booth, Kellogg, overconfidence is a major topic, especially by about week 13, where you're applying concepts to the real world and maybe even doing your own little research study. There are root causes of overconfidence that you might explore in an MBA class. Overconfidence bias. Just that, overconfidence bias. It's one of the most important things to consider because we as humans just have a bias, a tendency for people to be too sure about their judgments and predictions. Again, if you bought a AMC Pacer, which was kind of an odd car, you probably thought it was the greatest thing ever because of the design and everything else, even though it looked goofy. My mom bought a Taurus, goofy to some, aerodynamic and designed wonderfully to others. Again, overconfidence is identified as one of the biggest enemies of good decision making. That's why it's the topic today. Just repeating it here again so it sinks in. Professors and my mentors teach overconfidence shows up in areas like forecasting, entrepreneurial ventures, hiring decisions, mergers and acquisition decisions, and even investment choices. Now, Dr. Daniel Kahneman's work, we're going to go over that again, particularly from the book Thinking Fast and Slow, is often assigned reading for MBA students. I recommend reading this book strongly. His research proves that smart, trained people are still highly vulnerable to overconfidence. Last year, I was really excited to get to hear Malcolm Gladwell speak in person when I was an ambassador for the Maxwell Team International Conference. A large part of what Malcolm talked about in his speech was about a bunch of Harvard educated geniuses who were around JFK when he was president. The best and the brightest, they called them. And this group of best and brightest almost got the world nuked during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And one of the things that was kind of funny that Malcolm talked about, you can't say Cuban missile without the word crisis because they were so confident in their brilliance that they ignored common sense. And it was a crisis. Malcolm Gladwell points out how even the elite minds can mess up spectacularly when they trust their assumptions more than real world realities. Moral of the story, never confuse a fancy degree or your boss's idea with an actual good decision if they just came up with it spontaneously in the boardroom, especially when missiles are involved. In terms of erasing or reducing overconfidence, elite MBA classes teach several strategies. Pre-mortem analysis. This is from Gary Klein in reference by Kahneman's work. Instead of asking, why will this succeed? You should ask, it's a year from now, thinking about a year from now, and the project failed. Why would you suppose that it would fail? And then work to alleviate those problems or mitigate them in what you're doing to improve your chances of success. Very intuitive and something that you can do in a group setting, probably better. And it'd be nice to have a diverse group of different personalities to look at different things, because most complex projects, you need financial people and engineering people and marketing people and communications people and operations people. Bring everybody on board that needs to be either. Don't just do it on your own and think you covered all the bases. You should also try and force system two thinking to reveal blind spots. Remember from our first podcast episodes where we learned about different personality types often have different blind spots, and executives are likely to have D personalities in them, and they want to take action before they have data because they want to get things done and they like to accomplish things. We sometimes call this shooting and then aiming. Avoid it. Example, if 90% of the startups fail, don't assume that yours will beat the odds without real evidence. This reminds me of another one of my pet issues for our entrepreneur listeners. Too many entrepreneurs have only an inside view and say things that sound like this to me. I know I'm a startup, but in my case, I'm different because I'm going to sell shoes and my shoes are so comfortable. Everybody will buy them because they're such neat shoes. And besides, everyone has feet, right? So I've got a huge market. This kind of thinking leaves out a lot of important facts, like what percent of the world is aware of your product, how brand loyal are shoe buyers, and if you're going to be able to buy those shoes at all in the store where they buy. How are you going to get them to think that it's a good price to switch from their Nikes, Adidas, Skechers, and those loyalties? Another technique is red teaming. Assign someone or a group to argue against your decision or plan, no matter how good your plan seems. We're all wrong sometimes. Include the saying in your culture, I don't know. And it's a perfectly valid answer. I don't know. If you have to be right all the time, you're not going to say, I don't know, and you're not going to research it. And this is where culture can eat strategy for lunch. If you're afraid to say, I don't know, you might be afraid to stop the train that's going off the cliff. So your culture should allow someone to be wrong easily in the upfront deliberations, especially when it can save you over the cost of a bad project on you financially and your organization's image. It should be okay to fail early, save time, getting to those projects which are the real winners with your budgets allocated in a reasonable way. How to erase or actively manage overconfidence through structured methods. It's considered a foundational skill for becoming a top tier leader, investor, or strategist. I want to take a moment to talk about quantitative versus qualitative research. If you're making big decisions, you should have quantitative research to back up your decision making with real percentages of people interested in your product and your programs, so you can translate that into a real return on investment. Again, oftentimes people are using qualitative information like an avatar that's just anecdotal or just plain made up. What distinguishes quantitative data in general is you get a normal distribution at around 25 people, and you'll have sample sizes of at least 30 people to prove an idea. But if you're looking for a politician or an international sample, you probably want hundreds. Demographics are accurate at about 200 people. Firmographics, you can be in that 200 range too. But if you're looking for a general population, you're looking for 400. And at 400, you get plus or minus 5 at the 95% confidence interval. I won't bore you with how that works right now, but a basic focus group is only 12 people, and it does not give you quantitative data. Furthermore, there are other reasons like group dynamics that can skew your focus groups. You shouldn't be doing this type of research on your own. Here's a case in point. People, if you were to ask them in a focus group, are the prices of popcorn at the movie theaters outrageous? And people go, oh, yes, it's horrible. But that's the wrong question. That's an amateur asking that question. A pro would say, did you buy popcorn the last time you were at the movie theaters? What we want to know is what their behavior is. Sure, they don't like the price. No one likes the price of new cars either, but people buy them. And sometimes when people say the prices are too high for cars, they're not the right segment. They never buy new cars. That's like asking people who do not vote who is going to be president. They don't even vote. They're not in the game. So you need to have your sample frame examined. You can't just have qualitative small samples. You need to set up a methodology that's efficacious for business decisions that you're thinking about. This is super important because now you know. There are plenty of reasons to use both quantitative and qualitative research, and often it's a good idea to start with focus groups to focus down on what your idea is and test how people react to ideas so that you can best describe it in your quantitative research. Qualitative research is also really good at coming up with emotional reasons why people might like it. The why they like it, how they feel about it, the things that bring them to tears and get them excited about something. Then quantitative research can help you to understand who the target market is, what percent are interested, and what prices might be paid. The quantitative details. So leadership. For people wanting to learn leadership, I find that doing a little bit every day helps. And as a framework that works for me and it can work for you, is that we use the acronym CLEAR, which has 5 letters in it. And as luck would have it, there are 5 days in the week. So Monday, you can work on C, like communications. Tuesday, leadership staff, say building your executive cabinet or leaders, setting direction and vision. Wednesday is E, so the word to start with is equipping other leaders so that they can lead, or new leaders with leadership skills. Thursday is A, attitude and mindset. So perhaps share about confidence or the 30-day confidence builder that I talked about in episode 2. You can use my speak pipe or go to my website to request that. Friday is R and clear, and relationships is always a great one for R. Attempt to hang out with people that you'd like to be like, but also inspire your teammates. Be a leader for teammates that maybe have leadership promise. Now, in my experience, setting up a clear weekly agenda actually helps you to follow the rhythm of the work week. Friday people really do like to do relationship building in most places I've worked, like a Friday lunch. And if it's Monday, you better be communicating about something or you're irrelevant, right? But there are levels to these things. I can also help you with C words for your leadership investment decisions that can have a real return on investment, like working on culture or customer satisfaction. We call CSAT in the market research world. You've got to be intentional. One way to do that is clear. To follow the 5 days of a week with a regular work week, you can go CLEAR at the top and just work it into your planner and make it happen. Many of my Maxwell leadership colleagues feel the same way, that leadership becomes more important over time as we marinate on what creates a positive impact in our vocational and personal lives. Now, many of us are called to do leadership work. Go to beauleadershipgroup.com and use the speak pipe button or email me if you'd like more information about the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team. I have literally traveled the world on leadership opportunities. And so in my final minute, I like to look at the ancient power of counting. Even in ancient times, people did surveys and leaders took censuses. They counted people. They measured resources. They sought real numbers before making big moves. In the Bible, in the book of Numbers, yes, there's a whole book about numbers. God instructed Moses to count the people to understand the political and social landscape. If they needed data back then with stone tablets and sandals, what's our excuse today, right? If you value your career, your company, and honestly, your sanity, value data, value research, value truth over bravado. And hey, if you need somebody to help you ask the right questions, dig into the right markets, and find the real customers who are just willing, but also excited to pay you, reach out. I'd love to help you turn smart questions into lasting success. Until next time, stay humble, stay curious, and lead with passion.